do the bottom of that computer before you sit it down somewhere. It's all over the bottom of it. Probably inside of it. It was so deep.
I'll worry about that when I get over.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
If I hadn't come in here, it would have been all over.
Judge, the live streaming has begun.
All right. All right, let's see, we've got Commissioner Bartleman now. Does it look like Steve D, we got everybody that's going to be here?
I believe so.
All right, we're live streaming now. And so this is a special call meeting of the Fiscal Court and others to discuss the memorandum of understanding. Do we have a clerk on?
Yes, sir. This is Vicki. I'm here.
All right. Will you call the roll for us, Vicki?
Commissioner Bartleman.
Here.
Commissioner Jones.
Here.
Commissioner Parker.
Here.
Judge Clymer.
Here. All right, we're all here, and then we've got Steve Doolittle, Michael Ramage, Steve Irvin, we've got Brian Norman with the Sheriff's Department, we've got Dr. Stapleton here, Monica and Suzanne are here to help us through this. And so who's starting off?
Sir, would you like me to read the order first to open the floor for discussion?
Okay, yes, let's do that.
It is ordered that the judge executive is authorized to execute a second amendment to Memorandum of Understanding between Sprocket Inc. and McCracken County Fiscal Court to construct a co-working and business startup incubator within McCracken County, Kentucky. This Memorandum of Understanding amends an original Memorandum of Understanding executed August 19th, 2019.
Good morning, everyone. I am Suzanne Clinton. I'm director of Sprocket. I think everyone knows my colleagues, but I'll go ahead and just introduce them really quickly. Dr. Michael Ramage is the director of the Center for Computer Information and Technology at Murray State University. He is also the chairman of the Tech Council of West Kentucky and soon to be chair of the Sprocket board. Monica Belak is the regional director of entrepreneurial activities for Western Kentucky Innovation. That now includes Paducah, Madisonville, and Murray. And Dr. James Stapleton is the co-founder of Codify of Cape Girardeau, and he was also the founding director of Missouri State University's Center for Innovation and Entrepreneurship. I think we have a presentation that we're going to step through and quickly for you guys, and then we can answer any questions that you might have.
Let me do this real quick, Suzanne. We need to get our procedural technicalities done. We've read the order. We need to have a motion in a second. And then
So move, Bartleman.
Second, Parker.
All right. There's the motion in a second. So, and we're ready for the discussion, Ms. Clinton. Did you, Ms. Clinton, you have a video or something? Is that what you want? Go ahead and see that.
Michael, are you going to?
Oh, we have a couple slides. Are the slides in everyone's packet, or should we share those? Steve, I'll defer to you on that. I can
just share your screen. That'll be fine.
I will have to be a co-host.
Okay.
And while we're doing that, let me just start sharing a couple of things. What we're talking about today, and I think that Suzanne and Monica have talked to several of you, but is not that different than what we shared with you. It seems like forever ago at the previous fiscal court meeting. What was that, 7 or 8 months ago? What has changed is, first of all, let me actually start with what hasn't changed. When we presented to you 7 or 8 months ago, our goal was to create a co-working space and all of the activities that go around that. It wasn't just having a space where folks can come and work, which that was certainly part of it, but it was also creating some training programs. It was also creating some entrepreneurial activities. It was also creating startup competitions. It was also creating things for youth. It was a true ecosystem. And many of you traveled over to Dr. Stapleton's co-work center in Cape. And it was really using that idea and applying that to Paducah in the way that we are in Paducah and McCracken County. So it was really taking that idea here. Now, honestly, over the last year, we've had a lot of great opportunities and some frustrations. And one of the frustrations has frankly been working through this process of building out the space. And I won't go into all those details on why, but when we shared with you, our stated goal was to secure funding from KETFA. And that fell through for a variety of reasons, but why we're still doing this, while we're still pushing forward, is because what we're trying to do is very important. And frankly, with all that's gone on over the last 3 months, perhaps more important, because these are jobs that have been resilient to what has been going on. But it is truly about helping to get people back to work in a new way. It's not manufacturing. It is tech. It is coding. It is getting folks back to work in a way that is going to provide careers for the future. For those that traveled over to Cape Girardeau and visited Codify, one of the things that we saw and one of the things that we learned from Codify is how, frankly, successful that they've been. And they leverage tech training, business startups to generate jobs and new companies. And their focus is always been coding related. And I like that focus, allowing them to have a priority. But in their 4+ years, they've launched 40 startups and created 150 jobs. Certainly, we are going to have to grow into that, and they grew into that. But that is great success, and I think that the bones that allowed Codify to be successful in Cape, we have in McCracken County, we have in West Kentucky. So I think there's a great opportunity for our success to be here as well. Now, specifically, the reason that we are presenting and sharing to you today is that when we came to you before, we were asking our local partners for a total of a $600,000 match. And that $600,000 match was going to be matched with $600,000 from the state, from KETFA. And it was to build out space for the programs. So, and I'll share on the next slide what those, or walk through those on what those look like. But that was to build out the space. What we are asking in the amendment is to redirect those funds to two purposes. First of all, through the CARES Act, there is EDA funding that we are applying to receive what would be a $300,000 match from our local partners to also receive a 1.032, roughly a 1.3 total million total project. But we would take our 300,000, use it as a match to receive about $1 million in funding. It would accomplish the same goals of build out, and that would still take place. In addition, the difference between this project or this grant opportunity and what we were going to do from KEDFA is that KEDFA required a 50-50 match. What the EDA program requires is a 20% match. So essentially, the 300,000 would provide for that 20% match, leaving 300,000 not required for the match. And what we are asking to do with that 300,000 remaining is to specifically get started on these activities. While the construction's taking place, we would get started on the training program, on the startup competitions, on raising a venture fund of local and regional dollars, and start securing those pieces for the co-work space so that once that space is completed, that we would be able to hit the ground running. And that is purely allowed. We're able to do that because of the grant requirement being a 20% match versus 50. So specifically in that programming, there are 4 components. There's workforce development training programs. Many of you saw the adult coding training program that Codify had. We would bring that to Paducah, to McCracken County and in our region. Our plan would be over a couple years to have 70 to 95 participants. We assume there's going to be some level of participants that start that aren't able to complete, but about 72 participants that we would expect to complete. And those participants would be trained in what's called Coding Labs 1, and then some number would go on to Coding Labs 2. And we would have, we're estimating is about 30 new jobs that would be created based on that training. There would also be a startup competition and a mentorship program where we would likely have 50 to 60 participants. There's the slide that I am looking at. But we would have 50 to 60 participants on the startup competition with a couple, 2 to 4 startups launched and 2 to 6 new business or new jobs as well. And essentially this competition would not only provide the seed capital for these businesses to start, it would also provide some mentoring for these tech-based startups that would be all based in our region. That is one of the great things about this program, and so we would still have that component. We would also, in the meantime, work on developing a seed fund so that as these startups come along in the competition, perhaps we can't fund all the ones that are worthy of funding. So we would have a seed fund that we would develop to be able to help launch these additional businesses. Over the initial period, we would, we're anticipating 3 to 5 additional businesses that we would be able to launch. And then ultimately having the Digital Community Co-work Center with additional grant opportunities. And all of these activities, we would get started, but then there are both state and federal grant opportunities that we would be able to supplement the operational funds to continue these activities. The code training some of the Youth Code League that you all have likely heard about, which is outside the scope of this piece, and some of these other activities. We would pursue additional funds, and as indicated on the slide, we would be looking at 1.2 to 3 million in additional funds that we would raise through grant opportunities. So essentially, to go back, what we're asking today is that amendment that basically says that while we are still working towards the co-work space, and frankly, that's an important piece. The new match requirement for the EDA funding opportunity is only 20%, which allows us to go ahead and get started with these new job opportunities instead of waiting until the completion of the construction. I can go into more details on each of these, and Suzanne, Monica, and Dr. Stapleton may have additional pieces that they want to share, but let me stop and just ask, what questions do you have regarding what we're proposing?
I'd like to just clarify for the public, and I'm not quite sure. So we're moving from trying to get Kentucky money, Kentucky Economic Development Assistance money, to EDA money, and why we're making that change and how we stumbled upon this path, or did we stumble? We're changing paths. Why are we doing it?
I can share a little bit on the KEDFA, on the state money piece, and then we'll let someone else talk about the new opportunity, how that came about. The short answer is the funding opportunity that KEDFA had. They wanted to do it. The cabinet talked about wanting to do it. We were encouraged to apply, but when we got down to the details, what we were proposing to do is outside typical economic development. It is not, let's put $600,000 in a building and it's going to create 100 manufacturing jobs. It is not that. These are tech jobs. These are, this is in many ways, it's new economy type of jobs. And it was outside their bucket. And we tried for months trying to work inside of their constraints. And honestly, it wasn't going to work. It was going to tie us, not just Sprocket, but our local partners' funding into something that was not going to be. We still can be successful in what we're proposing to do, but their constraints, they're trying to think of these coding jobs, of these startup companies in the same way as a manufacturing company, and they just can't. They're just different. And so that is the primary reason why the state opportunity we didn't go through with it. Now, the EDA, maybe Suzanne or Monica or even Dr. Stapleton might share a little bit more detail on the EDA opportunity.
Sure. The EDA is a $1.5 billion initiative to the CARES Act. It is a very unusual grant opportunity that came about because of the COVID-19 crisis. It is being distributed at a record pace. I think the NOFA came out in late May, and it's our understanding that in order to be competitive for the funding, we are going to have to probably submit the application next week. For those of you who are familiar with grant programs, that is a warp speed that's unheard of. While the application process is sped up, so is the funding. So they are turning those around very, very quickly. It's an opportunity that we just doesn't come around ever in my experience. I don't think most of our experiences that we want to take advantage of. In addition, it's better. We're getting much more for our money because of the way EDA is structured than the way KIPVA was. It's an 80-20 for EDA. KIPVA was a 50-50. And that's not to say that KIPVA wasn't a great opportunity, because it was, and the state tried very hard to make it work with us. But it's just the unprecedented time we find ourselves in, I think, that generates the opportunity for EDA. That's just kind of unprecedented.
Let me add, if I may, while the KETFA opportunity didn't work out, that is not to say that the state is not supportive of what Sprocket is doing. It was a regulation. It was what was in code that they were trying to make work for a new type of project. The state, while it's outside of our scope of what we're asking you today, Sprocket has actually been, for the last 2 years in our regional entrepreneurship effort, Murray State has been the lead entity. We are actually stepping down to be a sub contractor, a partner in this, but Sprocket will be stepping up to be the lead entrepreneurial entity starting July 1 for our entire region. Suzanne alluded to that in our introductions, but so to say that the state wasn't supportive of what we're doing isn't true. They are very supportive of what we're doing at Sprocket. It's just that funding bucket was just not designed, and a lot of what KETFA does is not designed to keep up with the times in these coding and these new tech jobs that we're focused on, and that we have a ton of in Paducah already. We have a lot of those types of companies in Paducah. So anyway, I just wanted to make sure I clarified that as well.
We still got to work with the state, but it sounds like what their funding was set up to do is they needed some security. They're used to, all right, you're going to build a spec building, we're going to get a mortgage on your spec building, and you're going to produce jobs, and then we'll forgive your mortgage. This was complicated financing for their project, right? Is that fair?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
I think it also needs to be noted that this was the majority leader of the United States Senate office calling our office, the McCracken Judge Executive Office, and say, hey, we've got some money here that we believe will fit your project. They were familiar with our project. We didn't contact them asking for money. They contacted us and said, we got this money. We think it's a good fit. Get your application in, because the money's going out the door. And I think that's strong. Suzanne talked about acting at warp speed to get that money enacted, to have the majority leader of the United States Senate to call this office and say, apply. I could see them winking behind the phone. Apply and maybe you'll get it. It was I think, unheard of. I've been in government since 1976, and so it was a strong move on Mitch McConnell's part in his office to reach out for us. And I have speak with the senator from time to time, and so I guess that says enough about that.
That's a cool part of it. So what's different? So we're essentially just rewriting the same memorandum of understanding, same level of contribution from the county, same level of contribution from the city, same level of contribution from the county library, right?
Correct.
We're all in 200,000 each.
Correct. And the thing about this, or the opportunity here, is that we can start work immediately on the training programs, which we didn't have that leverage to do before. And I think that's really important as well. So the work will get started, the programs will start, which are really needed to get people back to work. So that's a pretty exciting part of this as well. You know, it's been a long, hard road with the state, but this opportunity could present itself to actually maybe get us a little more speed in getting some of this stuff done, creating companies and doing the training prior to having a space.
Gotcha. Well, Dr. Stapleton, I want to thank you for hanging with us. I think it was one of the first things we all did when we took office in January 2019 was to travel to your spot and see what you were doing in Cape Girardeau. Thank you for maintaining your interest in Paducah.
Yeah, thank you, Eddie. I appreciate everyone's sort of sticking with this as well locally. You know, I think I mentioned to you folks when you visited here, you know, communities in these regions have really been kind of fighting from behind since the recession of 2000 and 2001. And we've never really, if you look at the data, we've never really replaced those jobs that we lost during that time frame. The Great Recession kind of made it even worse, and then we went through the last several months, which, as everyone have said, are unprecedented. And if you look at that data and a lot of the research that we have been doing over the last 20 years, this activity that you all are supporting and working so hard to create is where new jobs are being created. There's a lot of discussion around how to create new jobs, and the reality is we need as diversified economies in these communities as we can support. And we were reminded by that, as Michael said earlier, these types of jobs are much more recession proof. The work is much more sort of change proof than many of the other opportunities. And so it's it's a high order. I know Monica and Suzanne have put in uncountable hours to try to really work through some of the challenges they mentioned. And we've just tried to do everything we could to support them along the way. And as Monica said, what excites us now is we can actually get in the community and start working with some of your citizenry that want to improve their opportunities. And all of these programs just sort of close the gap where that exists today. There just aren't the right opportunities for everyone. So we're happy to be a part of it, Eddie, and appreciate the continue kind of pushing forward on it.
I think the one exciting thing I see about it is that in the memorandum of understanding, you can begin implementing goal 2 before goal 1 is completed, as I understand Monica's explanation. And then when goal 1 is completed, which is the build out of the building, we should have people ready to move in because goal 2 will be implemented in the training programs. And also that's very encouraging. Am I correct in that, Monica? Goal 2 can start immediately before the build out's complete?
Yeah, yes, we will definitely get started on the programs before the building is done.
If something happens and the grant's not approved, I think based on what the judge said, we probably have a good chance of getting the grant approved. But if the grant isn't approved, can we still implement goal 2 without goal 1?
Oh, definitely. Yeah, definitely. And there's another round, Suzanne, did you say October? Okay. For EDA.
If this EDA is not successful, we would still have the chance on that round that comes around in October. If we get our completed application and we would be considered for that round if we decide to go ahead and do that.
Mm-hmm.
Well, no matter what, with a $200,000 investment, I mean, we're going to have jobs pretty quick on it. So our return on our investment is going to be quick and should be really well.
Yes. And that's what this whole pandemic, I guess, really shined a light on too. When I think it kind of brought some clarity and focus into, or made it more dire that we go ahead and get started with those training programs. They were always in our programming. We just switched the order, and I think it's timely. I'm glad we already had everything set up. I'm really glad that Codify already has the data. They've already vetted the programs. We've got also with Murray State and different companies locally, also wanting us to expand that into an IT. You know, we have a lot of ways to take this very simple approach to getting people trained at a base level and putting them to work in a job or industry that isn't really threatened by things like geography, you know, and so they can pretty much be wherever they are and work. So I think it actually is very timely. I'm glad we were already planning this. I'm sorry it took so long. I'm super happy that Codify stuck with us and that you guys have stuck with us as well. But I think the time is now. And so we'll get started on those programs. Even if we don't have our space, we have a lot of options for placing the training centers in various locations in the community.
Is the broadband capacity, is that available at the site exist currently? Will that come from Paducah Power or Comcast? Where will the broadband come from? And is it sufficient to meet what's expected?
There is currently fiber from Paducah Power running into the building. And based on what we see from now, we do think that we'll have plenty of capacity for that.
I'd just also like to add a shout out to Paducah Power because they are currently powering our wireless network at no charge. So they're supporting us in that way. That helps us each month with our grants funds, and we can use that as match. So that's about literally a $200 a month contribution that Paducah Power is already making to Sprocket. We appreciate them for that.
And I also think one of the exciting things about the project is talking about timing and I guess the stars aligning. That innovation hub over there at Tillman High School, you talked about hand in glove kind of thing. It's exciting to drive out and see how that steel's going up and envisioning that project getting underway and its relationship with the Sprocket. I think it's a gigantic movement for our community to be out front and get these things developed.
Great fit.
One thing I was interested in is the lease with the Musselmans, with the Coke plant. And I don't know if we need to get down really in the weeds too far on the thing, but the language in the MOU is that it was expected that the owners of the Coke plant will offer Sprocket a lease with the initial term being at a nominal cost. Is there some more, is it more firm than that, or that seems to be rather loose to me?
Right, that's another thing. I'm glad to have this opportunity to say that the space that Sprocket is in right now and has been for the last 2 years, just like Paducah Power is providing internet wireless service, we are provided this space inside the Coke plant at no charge. So that has been a huge in-kind contribution that Musselman Properties has made to us and enabled us to, be that much ahead in securing grant money and using match funds and such as that. The EDA has counsel that our council is currently working with to work out the details of exactly how the lease needs to look. It's my understanding that the Musselmans will have to commit that space for 20 years to this project in a leasehold lien fashion. So those spaces will have to be dedicated to these activities for a minimum of 20 years, no matter what happens with the ownership of the building. And so those details are being worked out by Whitlow Roberts and the EDA Council right now.
And so when we're talking about that, I think what of course we have to be careful with in spending taxpayer money is that it's going for a public use and it's being spent wisely and prudently. And so there is a section E there under Goal 1, Sprocket will secure an acceptable lease from Edward and Megan Musselman for the use of the space. And so that's one of the terms of the contract or the MOU. So I guess that covers it. It's not the fact that that's been done, but there will be input from all involved as to is that lease acceptable? You're saying it's got to be for 20 years. Of course, I guess the worry comes, well, what if they want a really, really high lease that can't be met, or the terms of the lease otherwise, other than the period of time is not acceptable. But that general language, I think, gives the protection to the fiscal court and to the taxpayers that got smart people looking at that and making sure the lease is acceptable. What else we need to talk about? Other questions? Any other discussion about it? We're ready to vote on it.
Judge, I have some question about some issues, but they're not directly related to the memorandum of understanding, and there's no need to discuss them here, but some issues we can discuss in the future kind of related to this, but it doesn't have anything to do with whether or not this is a good project and that the memorandum of understanding should be approved. But again, those issues we'll just discuss later and not now.
Okay. And so I guess really the bottom line sort of is, it's a project that we already, I don't know, our whole team, everybody on here almost has devoted a considerable amount of time and effort, had some frustrations. We've had no challenges. So it's been an effort. And so here out of the blue, here comes the pot of gold. But so we see it as we will all, I think, agree that it's an outstanding, desirable project. So it kind of comes down now to, do we want to continue to put in the skin in the game, the money that we have committed to do, and give the project a boost, a earlier start, or do we want to not put that amount of money in and sort of delay the project? It's already been delayed in a sense for a good while because of the inability to get up with the state financing. So that's what it sort of boils down to. So.
Judge, I think in light of everything that's going on, in a way, it's a blessing that the state didn't approve that grant, because instead of having 50-50 match with a lot of caveats, we've got this bigger grant that we can carry it on to 2 phases instead of 1. So, but again, I know the state tried to make it work out, but probably in a way, it's probably good it didn't work out, because this availability might not have come up if it had.
We'll find another way to use that state money. So,
all right, is there any other discussion? Are we ready to vote on it?
So when's the paperwork got to be where? I just want to make sure we're ready. Is there any other resource, any other help we need to provide to make sure that the paper that's supposed to get where it's supposed to gets where it gets?
We are working as hard as we can to conclude this grant application, and our goal is ambitious, but our goal is to submit it on Monday. Monday.
And what other piece do you have, other than this memorandum, what else do you have to put together to do that?
In terms of the EDA grant, we'll have to finalize the lease, and that's in the works.
And you've got counsel, Nick Holland, working on that?
Yes, Nicholas Holland at Roberts, yes.
Well, I need to add also, I spoke with Senator Donald's office yesterday and said, hey, it would really be helpful if you provided a letter of support for this grant. And I heard back in about 30 minutes, and the answer was yes, we'll do a letter of support. So they started it. He said, hey, we got this money, apply. before the money's gone. And now they're gonna, soon Congress will write a letter in support of the grant. That's, I would, I guess, I don't want to jinx the thing, but I'd be shocked if the thing doesn't go through, given all that. But we're on the road to getting this done now. Anything else? Eddie, you got,
Nope,
I can
good.
tell when you're about to say something.
No, I'm good.
Anybody else? You ready to vote then? All right, then, all in favor of this application, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. All right, carries. So
All right.
we'll follow it through, see how we do, and anything else, Dr. Ramage or Stapleton? Monica or Suzanne?
Thank you very much. We appreciate your
Thank
support
you.
and sticking with
Yeah.
us. Yes, this has been, you're right, been quite an effort. So we're going to work as hard as we can to make this happen. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank
Thank
you,
you all.
everyone. We'll be talking with you.
All righty,
Judge,
thanks.
we need a motion to adjourn.
Oh,
Oh, yeah.
need a motion to adjourn.
Oh, mate.
All right,
Second.
discussion, all in favor, aye. Opposed, no. We're adjourned.